so I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy County Manager, Karen Francois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and County Manager O'Connor. We are very pleased to be here today. I was thinking earlier in talking with our county assessor that since I've been here in the county assessor has not come before you. There's going to be some really good information. I think just before I came on board, they may have done a workshop. And I think it's fitting that we should follow this workshop with the conversation that we just had about affordable housing. Today we are, as you said, Madam Chair, we're going to be doing a brief 101 on property valuation. And we are also going to be talking about property tax regressivity and the impacts that it has on how we do assessments. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the mitigative factors that we're doing to address property tax regressivity. So I am very pleased and happy to turn it over to our County Assessor, Luis Rosario, and team to bring this presentation to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I just wanted to kind of bring up a few articles that came out and that were published about our fairness of property values. Articles that came out, New York Times came out with one, Bloomberg. The articles really stem from a July 20th property article that was titled The Assessment Gap, Racial Inequalities in Property Taxes. My staff and I actually met with the authors of these articles. It was Mr. Howard and Mr. Aviacion Leon. And just the following month, August 26th of 2020, I thought it was really important to meet with them and to find out, how they came up with these findings and really discuss the details of the findings. We gave them our assessment practices. We shared all our data with them. Unfortunately, they couldn't share their data with us because it's owned by the University of California at Berkeley. The meeting went really well. It was supposed to be an hour and hours. We believe that it really impressed them how we model our properties and the practices that you use. I think at the end of the meeting, they thought it was generating a really fair and equitable value. One of the things they recommended was that we should follow the census and layer the census in that way in our model maps, which we're going to does something very similar to what they were recommending. They still had some concerns about the awareness of residential property owners and very diverse communities, their rights to be able to appeal their values. And that's something we've been working on. We came out with the value notice and tax statements in multiple languages, a video that came out recently. And next year, now that the pandemic seems to be ending, hopefully we'll bring our appraisers to the neighborhoods so that we could do maybe workshops and showing them about the appealing process. I'm going to turn it over to Pat. Please ask questions as we go along. Hopefully this is more of a working workshop.
Thank you so much. And we do have a question, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just very quickly, could you please state again the video that you just mentioned that recently came out?
Oh, so the video is, it's a property tax and value notice video. It's on our website, and I could send you the link.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
It.
I'm not sure if it's very recent that was out.
No, that was done, I believe it was in around 2020, 2021.
I may
So it's fairly recent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in multiple languages on the website, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Pat Chapman, and I'm in the assessor's office. I've been there for 15 years, and I really like this opportunity to talk to you all. It's something that I have a big passion about. Yes, I'm the passionate assessor. I love this stuff. People always find it weird. You know, I teach a lot in this space, and I talk throughout the state, so I'm that guy. I'm that guy that just loves this stuff. So let's talk with our agenda today. Our agenda, we're going to talk about property valuation. We're going to talk about market value, how we come up with that per Minnesota statute. We're going to talk about our assessor qualifications. Who does this work? What do they need to look like from an education standpoint? How do we do that? Computer-assisted mass appraisal, one of my favorite things to talk about. Yep, I do love that. Price-related differential, Jen is going to talk a little bit about that, and this is kind of measures of equity, vertical equity inside of our system. And then value extremes, Judy Lazar is going to talk about that. Why your property value could have an extreme movement from one year to the next. And so some of the concerns around that. And we're going to talk about property tax regressivity and how we can mitigate that a little bit with, Luis is going to talk about that in our PTR system here in Minnesota. That is such a valuable tool in that. And then we're going to talk about next steps. Where do we go from here and how do we even get better at this? Some of the outcomes we're hoping to is an understanding of property valuation, an understanding of regressivity and property tax law, and efforts to mitigate the regressive nature of the property tax. So at a high level, Minnesota is a 100% market value state. That's our charge in statute, that each property is supposed to be on January 2nd of each year at 100% of its market value, what we thought it could sell for on January 2nd of each year. There's no bracket on how far it can move or what it can do. That's our charge. And how they measure this is through a sales study each year. So each year the Department of Revenue does a sales study on us, and we have to be within 90 to 105% of the median sale price. So they look at all the sales. You know, there's some outliers, and then they carve out the middle, and for that median value, we need to be at that between 90 and 105. Ramsey County has consistently been in compliance, and we've had no board orders from the Department of Revenue since I've been here for sure, and I don't know how long before I was here.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Reinhardt.
I think it's important that what you were just explaining is incredibly important for people to understand, because, you know, the comments of, well, I'm not going to sell my house, it's not worth that much, it's like, and all these different things, but to say, you know, we do this according to statute.
Yeah.
Is so important in that 90 to 105%, and if we weren't in compliance, what that means, we don't have that flexibility, nor should we. That's why it's in statute. But people think that somehow we can magically do this because they have a special circumstance.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to folks about that, it's if we, for some reason, were not in compliance, my understanding is that they comes in and they set them.
If we were not in compliance, the state would come in and raise it a lot higher than wherever we were. So let's say we were at 88 instead of 90. They would come in with a 10% probably board order and move everything.
Right.
So
it's
very important that we're very, very astute. Yeah, it's very important that we're here because the impact on the residents would be very, very, very high.
Hey, Commissioner, also, I mean, and it happens every year. The legislators get to report showing the 87 counties how they've done. And there's some counties that do get state board orders almost every year. I would think if that happened here, maybe I wouldn't be your commissioner.
Well, and the other thing that I do ask folks is, you know, this is market value. Is your house worth that much if you were to sell it? I know you're not, but if you were to sell it. And almost invariably, it's like, well, yeah, I could sell it for more than that. You know, especially in today's market, I suppose. But I think sometimes people don't realize that it's not, you know, in other budgets, you figure out what you want to spend and then you raise the taxes accordingly. And this is the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. we figure out how much that market value is, and then we decide, and then we figure out how we can cover the costs that are mandated. Most of our costs are mandated. And so that's also another part that's legislated to us. About 85 to 90% of what we do is mandated. So anyhow, again, I think that this is really important information, and it's kind of basic, but at the same time, not something that the average person is going to pay a lot of attention to.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yeah, we are very statute-driven, that's for sure, at the assessor's office.
Well, and our county, as you stated, is doing a good job with this.
Mm-hmm.
It may not make everyone happy, but, I mean, who does like paying taxes? Come on. But this
provide
is
the
fair.
service nobody
I mean,
wants.
this is a fair way to do it. We're making sure that we're doing it the way it is supposed to be done, and that's been recognized.
Yep, and that's the real goal is equity and assessment across the property types.
Yes.
Is value equity is what our goal is, and that's in all the measures of that we do very, very well. So the people that do this are the Ramsey County Assessor's Office. And I'm going to focus on the residential side. We have 2 units, the residential side and the commercial side. Today I'm going to focus on the residential side because that's just kind of what we're talking about a little bit with this. So we have 23 staff assigned to assess 143,275 parcels about. We have 18 appraisers. Those are the field staff that are actually out. We have 1 supervisor, that's me. We have 3 principals that handle the teams of appraisers and keep them moving and keep them motivated and keep them supported. And then we have the 1 data analyst, Ms. Tien, that helps keep all of our models running like a sewing machine. It's really great. So with that, we have about 7,960 parcels plus or minus for each field appraiser. That's a pretty high count for just to give you a number that's kind of an industry standard. The International Association of Assessing Officers says for a large jurisdiction like ourselves, it would be typical for each appraiser to have about 5,500 parcels. So we're a little over that, but we handle it by being innovative, by cutting-edge technology, things that we've come to you guys and you've provided for us, like Cyclomedia, invaluable tool that we got that right before a pandemic. Turned out to be a very, very great investment, and it really paid off for all of the residents of the county. So thank you for that. Each appraiser has to meet educational requirements, and there's a progression to your education, and again, in statute, it tells you how fast you have to achieve or get out of the industry. So it's a challenging thing for people, and we have people that are willing and motivated to do all of these educational steps and get through the process to get their licenses so they can perform these tasks. The first level is a certified Minnesota assessor. You have to do that within 3 years of your hire. Then you have to become an accredited Minnesota assessor within 5 years of that. There's a large process to come through that. It involves writing a form report, taking what everybody calls the 8-hour exam. There's a lot of education requirements along this way so that we can grow these people into good assessors to do all this work for us. And then at the top, we have the senior accredited Minnesota assessor level, and that's a lot of people in our office even achieve that level, even though like that AMA is kind of that high level journeyman working appraiser. You know, that's that solid appraiser that's really good at this is the AMA level. People go on to get their SAMA, the senior accredited as well. So on the residential team, you can see how it's laid out. We have 2 CMAs, 14 AMAs, and 6 SAMAs. So we have 2 people working towards their AMA, and we're really close. We're about to have 1 person, so we have 1 person that's almost there, so it'll be just a 1 entry-level person. The research and statistical analyst that we've got, what was it, about 10 years ago, Jean? How long have you been here, Jean?
I only been here probably about 6.5 years.
6.5 years. Oh,
The first day, I started first day of the 2015.
Okay.
January, I remember that day.
oh January 2nd, it's the assessment day. Oh, great.
As a purpose, I work in the assessment office.
Yeah. Since the hiring of a couple extra data analysts, which seems long ago because of, COVID, I missed 2 years there, so I guess,
Yeah, we all did.
our assessments have improved greatly. So again, being able to have the right personnel to do the right things in a modern fashion really, really pays out. The old ways of all of the, the clunky and paper and this, that's done. We need modern-looking models that use people plus statistics to come up with great assessments, and we have all those tools here, and they're performing really well. They're performing really well. And then also, currently we have a couple of student interns in our office. One is a progressive intern, and one is an intern that came to us through something that County Manager O'Connor set up, and I want to thank him for that. It was the Washington Tech Job Fair, and we've got a young man that comes back every year. He's in his third year of college now, so this summer with us. But we got him through that job fair, so again, innovative, great way for us to get people into this. And the goal of our internship program is to try to diversify our workforce. It's a challenge in our industry because nobody grows up wanting to be an assessor. Nobody's out in their backyard playing, I'm the assessor, let me see. Let me assess your dollhouse. How's that thing looking? So that spread out. Nobody wants to be an assessor, so it's really hard. It's challenging to find people, and sort of through this internship program, we were able to work with a number of great groups. Project and Pride in Living. We had a job track with the Project and Pride in Living, and we were able to get out of our office. We had an intern that made it all the way through the whole process, and now is working at the city of Minneapolis. And it's a person of color, a female, that would have never known about this industry without those things. And so those are the things that we need, and that's what our internship program is about, is exposure, right? Exposing this to people that normally wouldn't get that kind of exposure. Other interns, we've got a number of interns in the industry. We have 4 in our office. And then Dakota County has one of their leadership roles as a former intern of us from back. So we have a long-established intern program that has worked out really, really well. So let's talk about my favorite thing. The CAMA system is what we call it, or the computer-assisted mass appraisal system. We're fortunate that we have a company called Tyler Technologies that does our enterprise, and we just converted the tax system on the auditor side to this, so we have a one-stop shop for our enterprise CAMA tax system. So that's a great investment that is going to show benefit here in the near future, but we've been on the CAMA system, this Tyler CAMA system, since the 90s. So I think it's been about 1994, but you're going to have to fact check me on that one because I could be making that up. But it was around 94, 95, somewhere in there. That first assessment was done in this. And what this is a computer model that a lot of times the way this is done is with depreciated cost, where you just take the cost to build it, add the depreciation factor to every parcel or every property, and then it comes out with a value. It's very mechanical and straightforward. Very mechanical and straightforward. Some properties function well on depreciated costs. Things like townhomes, in case there's not a bunch of them in a spot. Maybe you have to do that. Maybe condominiums in a spot need that depreciated cost. Maybe that dome home on 3rd Street up on the east side may be depreciated cost, right? Because that's kind of the square pegs for the round holes. So those kinds of things function that way. But the one we really hang our hat on here is the market model, and that's the top one on your list. And you can see that the market model for the majority of properties is the most equitable way to do this, as yeah, I know this is a slide. We have about 87% of our properties on the market model, and the reason it's the most equitable is because the way we have it set up. We have small neighborhoods that lead to bigger neighborhood groups that lead to models, okay? And so in those layers, if you can get to the closest layer, the property, the model picks 5 comparables and it starts at the lowest layer. And we're fortunate here in Ramsey County, we have a lot of sales, so our model works really well. So it hardly ever has to really go out of that neighborhood group. But if it does, it goes to a little bigger group and not the whole group, right? And then it gets to a model where it just stops. We say, after you're outside this model, you're in a totally different property type. We're not going to go there because that's just not going to generate a reasonable or equitable value that can be relied upon. So that's why our model works so well. And over the years, since I've been here, the 15 years I've been here for sure, we've been honing this model and getting better at it. And since the addition of Jen to the team, that model has improved dramatically. So her and I are very comfortable inside that model, and it works really it works wonderfully. It's a lot of hard work. So the model, people think, well, the computer just does everything. Well, that's the whole fact, okay? The computer, first of all, has to have good data. So how do we get good data? That's where those 18 appraisers verify every sale that comes into the county. Every sale is verified, and the property characteristics are verified. Everything is verified about that sale.
Excuse me,
And
we have a question,
question?
Commissioner Carter.
Just a clarification, please. Talk about this model and how it starts at the neighborhood and then, I guess it's the
Neighborhood group, yep.
and then out beyond to the model. Are you talking about then looking for those comparables within that small area, larger area? You need to find a number of comparables to compare to? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And if you can't find it then at that higher level, what do?
Well, we
Does
haven't.
that happen?
Yeah, so if it got to the model edge, it would pick the 5, and we would look at the ratings of those 5 and the numbers maybe statistically where these comps don't make sense. Then we maybe would use one of the other forms like cost, because it's usually something that's really unique. So then we could choose a different method. We have all in our toolbox that we can value with. So maybe in a case we'd take it to appreciated cost. Maybe we would take a weighted estimate off of some average that the model creates otherwise.
All right.
So we have a number of different options. And fortunately for us in Ramsey County, we get so many sales where it hardly ever happens.
Gotcha. I just
Go
wanted
ahead,
to make
Jean.
sure I understood what that meant, and so thank you.
Yeah, Chair, Madams, and Commissioners, I'm the research analyst. Like Pat mentioned, a lot of times we use Tyler's CAMA mass appraisal system. One of the features of the CAMA system is provided regression analysis. So those regression analysis run the linear regression. They created estimate market values. So it's totally not depending, it's depending on the factor of the location and also economic factor, and plus the futures of the house property, or the property's futures. So those, this is the reason why the mass appraisal is very good, because they provided you the ability to just use a factor of the future of the house to generate the market values for the properties. And then they give some guide to the system to find the most close comparable sales. And then they use the market value, MRA, we call the market estimate value, plus all those sales record together and generate the market values.
Right. So the computer gets to do a lot of that. It generates coefficients. So let's use one everybody's comfortable with, a fireplace adjustment, right? So the model takes all the sales, looks at the differences, comes up with a reasonable probability that, let's say, $1,500 is what a fireplace is in this specific model for that neighborhood. So then that would be applied through the regression to develop the estimated market value based on the 5 comps that the model, the computer has selected. The process is not done. Now, before we go on to the next step, we like to take each appraiser and say, look at your values in your area. Do you guys see anything that is standing out? What is standing out? Because the computer does good work, but with people looking at it, it does great work, okay? So that's why, so we have another check at the end of all of our appraisers, and then throughout this whole process, Jen and I are looking at the coefficients and checking to make sure, so we're modeling throughout the year before and then get everybody's values. So we're verifying the model with appraisers, so all working on this collectively with the model, and we found it to be very, very good way of doing things. And yeah, don't want to ring our bell too hard, but we're kind of cutting edge on this a little bit, and we've been doing it for a long time. So we're really a little bit ahead of the curve here in Ramsey County, the way we are functioning with this market model. And a lot of people, going back to the article that Luis was talking about, they were almost a little blown away by the way we were modeling. They weren't aware that anybody was doing it this way. So they thought it was just all depreciated cost, everything moves, you know. And so they were actually fairly impressed with the way we're doing it. So, it's just a really good way to make sure, because inside of value, I'm going to talk about valuation regressivity, which is different than property tax regressivity, right? Valuation regressivity. Inside a group of properties, if you have a large group of properties, your value regressivity can be very large, right? But when you have little groups of properties, then your regressivity is just smaller inside a big. In the whole, your regressivity is lower because you're looking just at the so that there's less left out. Things are getting more accurate at each level because we're taking not a big swipe at it, we're taking this little piece, then we're taking this little piece, then we're taking this. So it really plays to a much less value regressive system.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
That really does help. So what, got something that, someone has invested a lot in their home, 4 fireplaces or whatever. But for that neighborhood, they can't sell, they're not going to get anything extra for that.
Right.
So or it could happen the other way around, where you've got, a home that's been there since the 1880s or whatever, and then the new development around it is much more expensive. So how does this model see those outliers?
That's an excellent question. Thanks, Commissioner. I'll take the second one first. So when we have new neighborhoods pop up, like let's say a big giant one like Highland Bridge, let's say that's going into an established neighborhood. Well, we create new neighborhoods now, right? Because we want those properties to function with those new properties. So there could be a possibility that they're in a neighborhood group with some other properties. But in those cases, we usually carve out those little things, and it happens a lot in the suburbs, where we've got little neighborhoods that was an infill. Roseville had a number of those recently when a bunch of new land came on availability. There's some Shoreview, there's some Vadnais Heights. So we take those and treat them as their priority so that they can value. And so a lot of times, those little neighborhoods are in together. You got that, you know, that 2,000 square foot two-story in Vadnais that's brand new, and that one in Little Canada that's new. It's probably pretty reasonable. Buyers for that are similar.
Commissioner Maris Castillo.
I'm wondering if one of the big things that makes people grumpy is when they have these big swings in their valuation, and it's because it takes many years. You know, it's like every 4 years they get a new evaluation and then they're shocked. Does this allow us to keep those valuations a little more, you know, frequent so there's not big swings in time? Does it help with the timeline so that you can do them more frequently in their big swings?
So Judy's scheduled things, but I'm going to handle a little bit, if you don't mind. There is some frequency in the model, and people's values can go up and down a little bit outside of a trend line as it goes up. If you've ever seen a scatter plot, and this is the nerd in me coming out, sorry about that, but there's a trend line. Just now, this is where it comes up. But if you have a trend line and there's values that go across that trend line as it goes up generally, there's sometimes a little higher, a little lower. The other thing is maybe one year you have really strong comparables and the next year not as strong comparables, so you see a little difference. But giant swings, like you're talking about, Judy's going to address those, and some of them have to really do with the way that the assessment happens. We assess on January 2nd, like let's take this year, it's 22. January, what was there in January of 22 is what we assess. That's for 23 valuation, right? Or let's say it's 22, you're going to pay tax on that in 23. So if something happens this year, we pick it up for next year and you're taxed on it the following year.
Got it.
So sometimes it's just the nature of our system. And the reason they did that, if anybody was wondering, was they wanted our values to be able to be questioned. Because if you set your value out and you pay tax on it that year, there's no timeline for appeal. So the Minnesota system's set up so that you get your value, you have almost 6 months to appeal. So you can question the value to make sure that you are being treated fairly.
And you actually have a whole year to appeal, so.
Yeah, through the tax court
Through
system.
the tax court system. And the other thing is, you know, when we talked about neighborhoods, our lake properties, for example, they're one neighborhood, and it's because there's a lot of detail that goes into generating these neighborhoods to make sure that they're, you know, that we're valuing the right properties together.
Thank you. Commissioner.
And in Minnesota, property is evaluated every year. In person, personal visit has to be done once every 5 years.
Correct, yes.
And so it's the swings, I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons for that, but it's not as if you have to wait 5 years. It's done, well, through this camera system.
Correct, and through the people too with permits. Like if you pull a permit in the city, we have to go out and we have to verify what you did on that. And so, yeah.
I was just going to comment, they're very prompt on that. I pulled a permit and I can't remember who the assessor was, but he was on the job like 2 weeks.
Matt Pedersen.
Yeah, he was at my house, and exactly 1 year later, he knocked on the door, and he's like, "Your permit is closed." Wow. And here I am. I was like, he was very prompt.
But that's a really good example where, you know, you may start a project and it goes through the new year. So we may have a percentage of that project complete. We have to come back to the next year to see if it's fully complete to add that value. Yeah. So you'll see a swing there, right?
Yeah.
And,
that's great. All right, it was lovely. And I got to see he still likes his job a year later.
Yeah. Was he back for a quintile review? Yep. Yeah, it was exciting. He met you before most of his coworkers. Because all our meetings are on Teams. Yeah, so it's exciting. And it's great to have interactions out in the community, and we're excited to get back to some of those too. That really builds trust and relationships with the residents when you can be out there and they see how professional the people are and how much they really care about this work. It really lends to credibility. So this is what I was talking about, the market model process and how it's a combination of people and machine, you know. Neither can function on its own in this space. We need each other to be really effective and be really sure that we're creating credible values. You can see the property information is being kept by our appraisal staff. They keep it current. The sale model creates the coefficient for each model based on the sales in it. Then Gene and I check that and make sure that it's not doing something crazy. Then the Canema system selects the comparable sales. The values are verified by the appraisal staff to make sure that there's not too many crazy outliers or something peculiar has happened. And then values are finalized and published to the residents via the valuation notices in March. And then the assessors report published. And we have been very, very fortunate to have a great report out there working through the open data portal, through the communications team. Our assessors report is just, it's pretty impressive. It's aesthetically easy for the layperson to look at. And that's a very, very positive thing of the assessor's report. And it leads, again, to openness. That's what we're about, openness. And we want people to see the system and know that we're there working for them. So talking about the market model, this is, I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is what a neighborhood map looks like for a part of St. Paul. And if you can see those different colors on there, they all represent different pieces of each place. And it's really a challenge to see on here, but that's because we get down there. We get down to those little places. We have Summit Avenue, for instance, you know, talking about regressivity. Summit Avenue broken up into a number of neighborhoods because they function a little bit different as you go down that street. We have the same thing just north of that. You look, all of the neighborhoods, we really do analysis to try to figure out boundaries are, not just the colloquial assignments, but the real value assignments and where they're at. So we look at this all the time. Last year we did a bunch of work, well, last 2 years we've done a bunch of work with our townhomes, and we've really put that model into a great model, and we're doing some land work currently to get our land system a little more accurate. We're really working on that, and as you can imagine, in Ramsey County, land valuation is a bit of a challenge because we don't sell much of it often, and especially in, you know, we're really a developed county, so to develop land values from the market is a challenge, but we get some sales each year, and then we try to use some rationale and try to figure out what each land parcel would be.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, Commissioner Mattis-Castillo.
Thank you for mentioning the land. I get this question often, especially in neighborhoods where someone might be holding an empty lot for a long time, and we have very low taxes paid on it, but it's holding space where we could develop density or housing. Is there a way for us, as we're thinking about those situations of those, because community often comes to me and says, make them pay higher taxes because then it would incentivize them to build on that vacant lot because it's holding space where we need housing, right? And we've got a lot of, you know, people who hold land in our city in St. Paul that don't live here, right? And they're kind of sitting on it, waiting till the value becomes high. And so is there a way that we can assess that? I know we can't, you know, do different things, but have you thought through that? Just as you bring up land, it reminded me of the question.
Commissioners, we do look at land sales and value them as if they were market. Some, you could be talking maybe about a commercial property
or any, like there,
anything,
you know, I'm thinking there's an empty lot at the corner of Maryland and Dale across from Connie's Creaming Cone, right? And someone owns it and has been empty forever, and they're just kind of like waiting till the market gets high enough, right? And I get that's legal and all that. But communities, like we need a grocery store there, like let's incentivize them to do something or improve it or beyond just mowing, right? Those kinds of things come up frequently.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever have a question about us, give me a call.
Okay.
Because they are trying to value them at
At
market value. And the one thing that I would tell you, like you always see that person that has the two lots and their house is on one and their garage is on the other. Well, those two lots are really intertwined now into one lot because, they need them both to operate their house. So sometimes on that case, there's nothing we can do, and then they can sell that, and the guy tears down the house and puts in a big giant improvement. So those are one case where we're a little bit hamstrung because the market will look at the whole as one unit, and then if a developer buys it, they cut it in half, but if another resident buys it, they just live there. So a challenge I can bring to you from the Highland Park area, just Hamlin, Randolph, that neighborhood there is going through something where someone buys a house and they live in it, and then the next person buys that same exact house with the same exact utility, tears it down and puts up a big monster. So then where's the land value? Well, we got to try to figure out the ratio of that to the new. And so it's a little bit of a challenge in Ramsey County, but we're trying to deal with it the best we can.
Just doing a time check, so we're going to go till noon as what I was thinking. So I'm just wondering if as you're going along, I know there's a lot of people to still present.
What he's got us so excited.
I know. We love
I
this.
pump people up
We
about
love
this
the
all the
excitement.
time.
If people want to stay, that's great. Yeah, right.
You
We
guys
can
are all
stay
ready
as
to sign
long,
up
right?
for assessment laws and procedures, right? Let's get you going.
We
All right,
love your enthusiasm.
All right, so we'll go through a couple quick things. This is MLS. This is a slide on MLS. This is showing the values since '05 in our county and in St. Paul. St. Paul's blue, Ramsey County red. And so you see how that trend line looks on values since 2005. Here is the report. The same thing with suburban, countywide, and city. So you can see that we're following the trend line. Our market model and all of the things that we're doing is working a lot, just like the market is. So we're following the market. And this is obviously at a really large global scale, but you can see the work that we're doing is really paying off, and this is a nice visual way of seeing that. And so now I'm going to switch and let Jen Tien talk about our performance measure of price-related differential.
Okay, the PRD, the price-related differential, is one of the statistic indicator we use to measure the assessment vertical equity. So as Pat mentioned a lot of times in the previous slides, in our assessor's office, we use Tyler's CAMA system, the mass appraisal application, so to estimate the market value for all the residential property in the counties. So one of the fundamental principles of the mass appraisal is that the assessment level should be equitable for all the property regardless of the selling price. So in order to check the uniformity, we conduct the sales ratio study every year and analyze the ratio between the assessment value and sales price, and calculate the PRD, the price-related differential. PRD is calculated as a mathematical formula dividing the mean ratio by the weighted mean ratio for the market study area. So it is a very simple mathematical formula, but it's also a statistical hypothesis analysis. So the PRD number told you if there is any pattern or relationship between the sales ratio and the property's value levels. So the Department of the Revenue and IWAO standards states that if PRD falls in a range of 0.98 to 1.03, it satisfies their standard of the vertical assessment equity. So if the PRD lower than 0.98, it tends to indicate that the assessment is kind of the progressive. So, well, on the other hand, if the PRD score greater than 1.03, it is indicated the vertical aggressivity maybe exist in the assessment. So we pay extra attention by that condition because it also means the high value property were under assessed related to the lower value property. So in this slide, so you can see it shows you the Ramsey County, the 3 PRD numbers. It is published in a state board of equalization reports. Those PRD calculated by Department of Revenue. So those 3 PRD numbers represent the market area in Ramsey, the overall Ramsey County, and the second one is represented for the city, and the third one is represent the market area for Ramsey County suburb, all the residential properties in that area. So from those 3 numbers, you can see all the PRDs actually lies in a safe, we call the safe range. It's really close to the ideal PRD number. The ideal PRD number is 1. So our number shows us, at least from the PRD perspective view, our assessment is vertically equitable. So, and our, like Pat mentioned a lot, we do a lot of research during the year, like a sales ratio research, regression analysis. All we do is try to improve the assessment uniformity in the Ramsey County and make sure our residential property are assessed equitably.
Thank you. We have a question, Commissioner McDonough?
No,
did
it
you
was
have-
answered.
Oh,
So,
great,
thank you.
okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay.
So I'm going to turn it over to Judy here for if there's a significant value increase or decrease, the most likely reason.
I'm Judy Lazar, and the reasons, well, given that properties change over time, it's not unusual for some properties to experience a significant increase or decrease in value. For example, if you have new construction, the property is originally valued as a vacant parcel, so that's just the value of the vacant land, and once that home is built, it's revalued to reflect the improvements that are essentially the newly constructed home. With things like that could also increase the value of a home if somebody purchases average and it's just original and dated, and they go and they put in a new kitchen, new bathrooms, floors, fixtures. We'll capture that, and that could also most likely create a large swing upward in that value because it's now reflecting what the property actually is, a remodeled home. In the form of tear downs, it's kind of a little bit of a fluctuation where you're starting out with a home that's probably older and dated. So you're at that value, and then once that gets torn down, you're back at the land value. The home is built, so that'll. In other cases, our appraisers will go out and do their field work. They'll do their 5-year reviews. They may come across a property that is significantly in condition, it needs a new roof, windows are broken, maybe it needs siding, so they'll adjust the property record accordingly to reflect what that property actually is, and that value can actually go down to reflect its current condition, or conversely, they might go out in the field and see somebody put on a large addition, and they'll go and capture, the additional square footage and the addition, and that would likely cause the value to swing up. So their appraisers are, just making sure that the properties are, represent, as far as the value goes, what they actually are in their condition, their quality, and they're actually very good at that, so. And another thing that can create the swings in the values are market conditions. And we know now that right now we have a shortage of homes, so there's more buyers competing for fewer homes, so bidding wars that are now, so people are actually paying more than the list price, so that's creating, the sharp increases in values. And if we look back to like 2008, 2009, when crisis back then, all the values were dropping quite quickly back then, and that created the decrease in values because of the oversupply of foreclosures that you had to compete with in order to sell. So, but as Pat mentioned, per state statute, all properties are valued as of January 2nd, with the taxes payable in the following year. And because properties are valued on January 2nd, any change in the property within that year will get reflected on the following January 2nd, paid in the year after, so.
So I have a question, because I don't know if I'm remembering incorrectly, or if maybe it was a state program. Was there a program where your property taxes couldn't go up by a really large percentage, like 5 or 30%? I mean, that's really high.
So there was a probably about 10 or 12 years ago called limited market value, and it changed over the period of time. And speaking from my side, it was very administrative intensive, because the program was you could go up to 25% or up 25% or 50% of the difference, less than some other calculation. We just moved offices at the assessor's office. We just went from the floor to the first floor. We're shrinking our footprint. And I just threw all my limited market value stuff away, so hopefully that doesn't come back.
Was that a legislative,
Yes, it was a legislative matter. And in this session, it was brought up briefly and then disregarded because it's bad policy. What it does is, and I research for them to take to the legislature for this. What it does is it impacts the lower value properties disproportionately to the higher value properties, because over a period of time, the bracket affects the higher value properties more positively than the low value properties. So they pay more tax. The lower value properties pay more tax over a period of time than a higher value property would. So it seems like something that everybody would want, but it really impacts the people that they're trying to help in a negative fashion. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, first, if that was paper, I'm sure you recycled it. You didn't just throw it out.
Right.
But so what happens? Well, I mean, we don't have that anymore, and I know it was really a pain. And I know that there was one point at which the legislature wanted to do it for the business sector as well.
Yeah, for everything.
And the chambers of commerce said, don't do it. Because it's not real, so you shouldn't do that. But what happens, so that if there's a change, a significant change that is made, and it basically takes a year to catch up before you pay for that. And sometimes that can be, I mean, I know one person had called me, this was a number of years ago, and said our property taxes more than doubled. And so we started talking, and they had like doubled the size of their house. So it's like, well, okay, that really does have an impact. But I think it was because that year lapse, they thought they had already gotten that, and then suddenly it was there, and they're trying to figure out, what happened there. And so that's got to be really difficult when it takes that long. And it should. I mean, I understand that you can't assess something that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. But that lag, I'm sure, causes some
It causes confusion among residents. The Minnesota property tax system is very, very confusing. You can have almost, I think it's 63 now different classes of property, because our job is not value-only, classification too. So the combinations of things, you could get up to 63 different classes. I think Wisconsin has 4. So our system is a little more complex, but its desire is to try to level the playing field for some people. So the intent is always pretty good in some of these programs, like the senior property tax referral, or things where people can push that property tax burden out until they're done using their property and then pay it back after that. Things of that nature that help people. So yeah, but it is in that lag time, again, it's integral to the part so people can appeal. And so that, and our staff is excellent at explaining this to people, and we do a really good job on the phones. We're just coming out of a high volume season of phone, and people just, well, it was just amazing to see them. And a lot of the questions we're probably at about, real numbers here for you, but we're probably maybe 5 or 7% of all the calls turn into appeals. So people are really just educating, and that's part of our job, is to educate the residents when they call. Here is what is happening in the system. This is what the system looks like for you, and these are your options if you aren't happy with the system. So,
Commissioner Reinhardt.
And then just one follow-up related to all of this. A lot of this depend on the permits, and those are all done at the level, I believe.
yeah.
And that there are contractors out there or individuals out there that don't pull a permit. And so, in fact, there was one shortly after I became a commissioner where it turned out that there was a piece of property in one of my communities that was only being assessed for the land value. And there was a house there. They didn't pull any permits. And so it's like, okay, how do you deal with that? And that's an extreme case, obviously. And they did figure out how to deal with all of it. But you're relying on people to pull those permits, and not all of them do. And I find that very disheartening. But at the same time, how do you deal with it?
Well, the quintile process is designed to try to catch most of that. They every 5 years go in and walking and knocking.
True.
Our people are on the, we got boots on the ground doors, and our people. That's where the better. If they don't let them in, the astute, I see what's going on. You can see, you drive by the house last week and there was a dumpster, and then you're knocking on it this week, and they said they've done nothing. And then the statute gives us flexibility inside of judgment, right? When we're not allowed in, we can make judgment. So if they let us in, that's always the best, because then we're the and we've been seeing, so the quintile process and the way the statute allows us reasonable, educated on what the house looks like, to deal with that.
I'd like to add, too, that we also have a lot of the tools that are great to, for example, if somebody puts on an addition in the back, they have a fence and there's a dog back there, well, no one's going back there. So we also have sophisticated aerial views that will actually measure that out, and we have different angles we can see, and we can correct the record and reflect what the property actually is in using quintile. So if they go out on quintile, they come back, they give it a review with all the extra tools we have, and accommodate some of those non-permitted work.
Excellent point, Judy. Again, we are a modern assessor's office, and all of these tools that you guys have provided us really, really pay off.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right. Next.
Okay. I did want to note, Commissioner Reinhardt, that there is a law called Letter of Assessor that allows us to catch that if it's a new construction that's put on, that we could go and get back taxes on it as well. The last slide is
Sorry, whoa, that's like unusual that that's even on.
It's just talking about property tax, the property tax refund. You know, property tax is inherently regressive, and the reason it is that when we assess properties, it's regardless of the income of the homeowner, right? So for low-income homeowners, it means they feel the impact of raising values and taxes more, and it equates to a higher percent of their income that is used to pay property taxes as compared to a higher income owner. And, you know, we've seen that in the last 5 years. Our most diverse neighborhoods have been going up the most, and they're paying. One of the things that helps with regressivity is the property tax refund program. And this really has to be part of the puzzle to lower their income. So that's really aimed at property tax regressivity. It's a state-run program. The reason that it works is that it works well because it's directly tied to the household income of the property owner. And I think last year we mentioned that when we talked to the property Department of Revenue, only 2/3 of homeowners that file for homestead actually file for property tax refund. At least 1/3 of the property tax refund on the table. That's about $25 million. So I just wanted to point it out to you that this is really important, that we need to get this out to our property owners and that they can file. They can file using online. They can go to the Department of Revenue website. There's 3 types of refunds. One is the homeowner refund, which is based on the household income of the property taxes they pay. The other one is the rental refund, which is based on the household income of the property tax they pay through rent. And the final one is a special property tax refund, which is related to the amount of taxes that have gone up. If the taxes have gone up more than 12%, in a year, they qualify for the special property tax refund, and there's no income limitation on that. So the 2 slides I showed you there, you can file for the 2020 refund program. That deadline is August 15th of 2022, and you can also file for the 2021 refund program. That's the deadline for that one is August 15th of 2023. So there's a lot of time to get these done still. One of the things that we're doing, we're on the last slide, Pat, is we're reaching out to homeowners. We have some community funds and renters using a 3-prong approach. We're going to go out to do some community events. Unfortunately, some of them have been canceled, like Cinco de Mayo, but we're going to continue to try to get on those community events. We have some media. The media has started. We've done the news. We may do some radio to get the word out. Social media platform. The Department of Revenue this year has actually put the material in 3 different languages now as well, in Spanish, Somali. And the big community engagement event we're trying to work for is in August. We are attempting to have a workshop where we have property tax income tax preparers come in and help the property owners property tax refund program, and we're going to have translators there too. And we've been working with the nice thing about this article that came out was that we make connections. The Department of Revenue property tax refund has reached out to us, and we've reached out to them. So we're actually working together on this, and hopefully we'll put on a really nice program so that we can get some people signed up for this. With that, we'll leave it there.
Super, great. Thank you for your presentation. I've got Commissioner Ortega, then Commissioner.
This is important. Luis answered most of my questions. I was going to say, what will we do to get to that other 1/3? What did you say, 25 million?
25 million.
And the other is, what is the state doing? So at least they're connecting now and trying to move. But it seems to me that it is a state program, and is there any way the state could, connect at that level, rather than putting the owners, folks that have the low income, as you stated, which means they usually have jobs that you know, are inflexible to do some, I mean, they got certain hours, they're usually taking public transit, most of them in many cases. My point is, there isn't time, and I'm wondering if there's some way the state could connect that whole property tax records and sort of put the onus on the state to say, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that we've been working on, especially the special refund program. That's a credit that we could actually perhaps calculate ourselves and make it a credit on the tax statement, so that, so no one has to file. I know Heather Bessler has actually written some legislative information on that we're moving forward. The other thing is, you know, working with the state, if we can somehow, I think we have to look at everything, you know, the value notice and the tax statement, the way it's put together. We used to have a lot of the property tax information in paper. You know, you could get it at the library. They would bring the Department of Revenue to us at the office, so when people came and filed their property taxes, we could give them the property tax refund form. That's been gone. Everything is online now. So I think we're missing a really big part of the community that's not digitally connected with us. And so we need to come back and somehow reach out to that group. I think technology is really important here, right? How do we get technology in those households so they can actually file online?
Or a kiosk.
My point is still, with or without a computer, the only individual.
Right.
So depending on your, you know, the availability of your resources in terms of time and so forth and knowledge base, I'm saying the onus should be on the state.
And that's coming around, Commissioner. In one of my other lives, I'm the president of the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers. I know it sounds impressive, but we're working with the legislature on that exact point. The state has both records.
Exactly.
They have your income. They have your property. Why can't you guys marry that together and issue a check? So there is a movement for that. But you know, it's the Titanic trying to take a left turn. So,
And I get that, everything's the type.
but it's out there.
But my point is, that's the kind of issue that maybe needs to be on our state legislator.
Right.
Our legislative
Yeah.
platform, for sure.
And, you know, I think the good thing here, the positive thing about these articles is that we actually have a great communication now with property tax refund. We've always had the taxation division in DOR. We have a great working relationship. We have a property tax compliance officer that we meet with them once a quarter. But property is a completely different division. And now we are actually talking and we're meeting. And I think we're going to make some progress here.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Commissioner McDonough?
Yep, that's right, where I was going to go.
Oh, great, okay, thank you. Commissioner Manis Castillo?
I just want to say that there are people outside this room watching this that are not staff, because I've been getting texts from constituents for most of the questions I've asked. The last one is when the statements come out, if someone is a landlord, small landlord, multiple sites, I have one constituent that sends me a photo of when he gets 11 statements in the mail every time, and he's like, can't you put these on one and save money? And so I think in the law, there's a way to merge those mailings. You can say, here's all your properties and here's our statements, or is that
So
legal?
our value notice and tax statements, the Department of Revenue, it's their
required.
value notice and tax statement. It's the same throughout the state of Minnesota. It's not something that Ramsey County can control.
Got it, thanks.
Commissioner Reinhardt?
And I did know that was highly regulated. I just want to do one really quick shout out to our GIS folks, because talk about, you know, being a nerd here. But the fact of the matter is, all of this is so connected with other parts of the county. It's not you doing this work in isolation. And I do know that it was a number of years ago now, but where Public Works and Property Records and Revenue use different maps. And it has been changed, and there's been a lot of influence as well. But I just wanted to give a little shout out to the staff.
Well, great job. Look at you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for your great work and your service to the community. I do agree that when you refer people who are really irate about their property tax values, when they talk to you, you really do work with them, and I really appreciate that. You know, most of them are, they're not happy, but they at least understand more. So thank you for that. And I just really appreciate all of your work. And thank you for this great workshop. And thanks all of you. Our workshop is adjourned.
Thank you.
And we have a